The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.
The American people have always held the achievements of Chinese civilization in the highest esteem, and we have the warmest feelings of friendship for the Chinese people.
The China Ronald Reagan visits this week is not the China he used to talk so much about. That China is Taiwan. Tonight, we'll talk about Taiwan with Victor Chang, a Taiwanese government official. Good evening. Ronald Reagan is officially at this hour on the last leg of his journey to China. Mr. Reagan is scheduled to arrive in Peking at about 11 o'clock local time tonight for a 4-day stay. Even before arriving, the president's trip has made news with the prospect of a Washington-Peking agreement to provide the Communist Chinese government with nuclear power technology. But with all of the hopes the president carries with him for improved trade, military, and cultural ties, as the New York Times points out in an analysis piece today, the real points of tension between Mr. Reagan and the senior Chinese officials he will speak with will likely be over Taiwan. Taiwan, or the Republic of China, was once a cause célèbre for political conservatives like Mr. Reagan. Right now, the Taiwanese government isn't saying much about the president's trip, but it is thought to be edgy about the possibility of arms sales to the mainland. And of course, Chinese communist leaders have long held that U.S. interest in Taiwan is the single major stumbling block to improved relations between the two countries. Those are some of the things we will talk about tonight with Victor Chang, the Deputy Director of the Chinese Information Service, the official representation for the Taiwanese government in this country. He is based on the West Coast in Los Angeles and is in Idaho for a visit, and we'll be visiting with him in a moment. Idaho businessmen have developed increasing interests in the possibility of increasing trade with Taiwan. State government officials and business leaders from Idaho have made many trips to the island in the last few years. And as Bruce Reichert found out, the trade prospects are many, but so far largely undeveloped.
Here we have Idaho, a land teeming with exportable natural resources like timber and wheat and potato fields, and computers. That's right, computers. At least that's what one Idaho company is exporting, and one place they're shipping them to is Taiwan.
5 years ago, the situation in Taiwan appeared bleak in the extreme. President Jimmy Carter had just de-recognized Taiwan in favor of diplomatic relations with mainland China. And more than one political pundit said the handwriting was on the wall for the famous little island located about 100 miles from 1 billion Chinese communists. But if the official government positions seem to have deserted Taiwan, American businessmen certainly did not. They're streaming into Taiwan. And earlier this year, the Taiwanese experienced their first Big Mac attack and the 31 flavors of Baskin-Robbins.
Last year, Taiwan's exports topped the $25 billion mark, and its imports, the goods and services brought into the country, totaled over $20 billion, with some of those goods coming from this man, Robert McCaleb. He used to work as an international sales manager for Hewlett-Packard, but in 1981 he founded his own company, where he and about 15 other people are trying to make Idaho a household word in Taiwan.
The people we're working with are buyers of everything from weaponry to whole sides of beef to potatoes. And we entered some dealings with them basically on one specific set of products. It happened to be integrated circuit chips, which we do a fair amount of work with, and has since expanded to, for instance, approximately 600,000 tons of maize or corn, which will be used for corn oil production, and then the residue fed to the cattle over there. And it tends to expand from there.
What exactly is it that the Taiwanese want from the state of Idaho?
A great question. Taiwan is a great market for American products, some of which do come out of Idaho. They are a leading food processor in that region of the world, and they are both in the market for raw materials, i.e. wheat, corn, and other cereal products specifically, and in processing equipment. There are large bids outstanding right now for equipment that is technically advanced in sanitary condition keeping, dairy equipment, and products of that nature. But Idaho can contribute most directly by providing the raw materials, the raw products. If we look out 20 years or so, things will be drastically different. A lot of people that are expert in the relations of that region feel that there will be less and less of a difference between the Taiwanese and the mainland Chinese, both in trading and perhaps even in governmental structure. We have an immediate opportunity in Taiwan. There's no reason why we can't be in the millions out of Idaho inside of a year or two if we merely apply ourselves.
2 weeks ago, Governor John Evans was set to visit Taiwan, where he was planning to establish a sister state agreement with the island. That trip was postponed with the death of Frank Church. And earlier this year, the legislature defeated Evans' proposal for a Department of Commerce. The result, according to David Porter, has meant frustration for himself and others wishing to establish trade with Taiwan.
Because we did not receive the authorization from the legislature for Department of Commerce, we were not going to be able to follow up on many of the leads that would be potential for Idaho business people in Taiwan. The Taiwanese government has expressed very strong support for trading with Idaho. My frustration right now is that we don't have the resources in the state of Idaho to follow through on just the legwork that's necessary to see that that interest in Taiwan is carried on into business contracts. We just don't have in the state of Idaho personnel now that can do that. So there is definitely a missed opportunity with that.
More now on the trade and political situation between the United States and Taiwan with Victor Chang, an official representative of the Republic of China. Mr. Chang was born in Shanghai, received his undergraduate degree in Taipei and his master's at the University of North Carolina. Among other things, he's been a television reporter and anchorman. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me here with you.
Nice to have you here. You heard at least one of those gentlemen talk about what he sees as rather remarkable opportunities for trade between this state and Taiwan. Do you agree with it?
Very much so. Let me point out that the basic structure and nature of the two different economies between your country and ours is that we have a very small island, lack of natural resources, and the kind of industry we have is really, in fact, basically import raw material and process and then export. So we earn by hard work the profit of this processing procedure. The U.S. market is such a huge one by itself. So maybe in the past there is a lack of confidence or understand that Taiwan can be a potential market for U.S. export. I'm saying this not only for the people in the state of Idaho. This is true maybe with some other states in this area too. So the nature of our economy requires our businessmen to reach out for foreign markets, whereas the nature of the economy here sometimes is self-completed in some way. And we certainly hope that this situation can be changed with the recent scheduled trip of Governor Evans to my country, and sort of can initiate more effort to understand that market out there to be a target of export area.
Let me serve as a surrogate here for a businessman who might want to entertain the prospects of trading something with your country. What and how would you advise them to develop that relationship?
Oh, for example, we have a trade office in Los Angeles, and I believe there is another one either in San Francisco or in Seattle. Even if not so, we will be able to pass the information regarding the U.S. investment in that country, because we have been constantly encouraging foreign investment into our country. And so far, we have at least I would say 700 million worth of U.S. dollars of investment in Taiwan. So that is, of course, a gradual accumulation over the years. But there is still room for more investment, because we have just established our own science park, which is a similar version of the Silicon Valley in California. meaning that we are now moving toward a direction of high tech and more advanced electronic technology.
There's been some controversy here in Idaho over the last several years about whether state government is aggressive enough in encouraging these sorts of ties between not only your country but other countries, particularly in the Far East. I'm not going to ask you to comment on the political situation here, but in general terms, would you prefer to work government to government in some way, with, or at least have a government as a sort of a go-between between a businessman in your country and one in this country?
I guess both channels should be open. I mean, from a state to state level, if the governor, I mean, if this state government here can, which is very good for Governor Evans to take this trip to visit our country, because through that channel they can establish direct communication, and you know, because we have a whole list of ways to encourage foreign investment into our country, but that, I'm afraid, is not known generally to many of the business people here. On the other side, the private sectors in Taiwan and in the state of Idaho should also establish communications. That's why we try in the past 6 years. I believe we have visited this state at least 4 or 5 times, trying to promote trade between the two countries. On the other hand, in Taiwan, we are also trying to help American government set up a trade exhibition, help them establish their own trade center, and in recent years we have tried to decrease the import tariff or duties on many, I guess I'm speaking for more than 100 or 200 items of import items from this country. So those are the things that we are trying to do to encourage businessmen from this country to come over.
And a trip like our governor visiting Taiwan, that's not just window dressing, that actually accomplishes something in terms of improving the trade
I don't think
relationship?
that's a window dressing, because in the first place, we have many sisterhood program with many of the states in this country. That, in a way, is symbolic of the goodwill between the two people, but very, you know, you have to try to start to understand the people before, or the market, before you can decide what to do. So it is important for you people to visit us and find out about the market, and then decide what you can export. As the gentleman before me who has spoke already, that he sees Taiwan as a very potential market for raw material for the state. Now, I know that we have been a constant buyer in terms of your local agricultural product, but as to what can be further exported in the future, I guess it takes a team effort, like the local government and the businessmen together to find out.
I see. Your economy has grown at a rate of more than 7% over the last couple of years, while much of the world, most of the world, all of the world has been trying to get out of a deep recession. What's the reason for that level of growth when so many other countries have been limping along, including this one for?
Well, I guess I can say that 5 or 7 years before now, we were really enjoying even higher growth of economy, mainly because of our labor force, which is cheaper in its salary but higher in skill. But right these years, I mean the recent years, we are also facing hard competition from countries like South Korea, or places like Hong Kong or Singapore, because the same labor force is available and the same high skill labor force is available, but the wage, the cost of labor has increased significantly. So right now we are really on a competing position with those countries I've mentioned. In addition, I mean, on top of that, mainland China has posed itself as a huge labor force, cheap labor force. So I think that will have to force us to move the entire industry structure. That's what we are doing now, to try to upgrade the technology, because we cannot rely on the labor force anymore.
I see. There are some analysts, as was mentioned earlier too, I think, who believe that the economy is actually better off today than it was in 1979 before the upheaval in relations between Taiwan and the United States.
Yeah, ironically, maybe this is this was one of the reasons that President Carter and his administration realized at that moment that even without the formal diplomatic ties, Taiwan still will be doing business and doing cultural exchanges with this country, because it takes more than 30 decades for us to get to the relations we are having with your country now, and I don't think it's going to be cut off overnight. And surprising to our own people is the fact that we were able to increase our trade. Right now, we are the sixth largest trade partner with the United States, and the United States of America has, for the first time in the country, become the leading supplier to Republic of China in terms of trade. Before that, before last February, Japan has always been the #1 supplier, but now United States of America is the #1 supplier.
I mentioned earlier the reports of concern on the part of your government about the president's current trip. Tell me more. Are there concerns? And
Oh,
if so,
of course, very much so. To make a long story short, in the first place, it is not our desire to be cut off with the diplomatic ties with Washington D.C. in the first place, but we were sort of forced to accept the fact as it was. So our concern now is that what is going to happen for this trip. I mean, would President Reagan be able to come out of China this time without further damaging our well-being or our benefits in terms of our mutual relationship with this country? As far as I'm concerned, I read on the newspaper that President Reagan has openly stated that he is not going to concede or to give in anymore in terms of the relation between Washington D.C. and Taipei, where is our capital. But you know, Communist China, in some way, they would definitely try to maneuver behind this. So we really hope that President Reagan will live up to his words this time, because whatever that is going to cause us to pay is eventually going to affect the peace and security in that whole area in Western Pacific and Southeast Asia.
Well, let me ask you a couple of specifics that have been reported in the press.
Okay.
For example, this nuclear agreement, that transfer of nuclear technology with the People's Republic. Is that a reason for concern?
Oh, of course, because in the first place, Communist China itself already have the capability of manufacturing nuclear weapons. So what they are looking for is material, which is, I believe, Soviet Russia has been very reluctant to provide them with the material. Right. Now they are trying to get it from your country. Now, I can understand the reason that because of the nuclear industry in the domestic market has its problem, and the industry here, of course, would like to have a slice of the business with mainland China. But on the other way, I believe there is a collision between two national policies in the United States of America, because on the one hand, United States of America wants to be closer with Peking in the hope that Peking will become an offset to the growing Soviet presence in Asia. But on the other hand, the United States is also concerned about this nuclear proliferation among the world community. So somewhere in that two lines there is conflicts, and how this country can manage to find out or to get long-term benefit to U.S. interest takes the leadership to decide.
But it's a problematic situation, I'm hearing you say, that it could create severe problems, not only in this country, but in
because many Asian countries in Asia would not like to see China equipped with nuclear weapons, because once they become strong,
Of course, this is being billed, I think we ought to say, in fairness to the administration here, as a means of producing electricity, not as a means of producing weapons, but the technology is in some cases transferable.
They have the technology of processing from the waste of this electric nuclear material into possible weapon material. But then, as I've said, they have their own technology now, so it's a matter of whether they would like to sell it to transfer to other countries instead of what Washington, D.C. can really closely watch on.
How about direct weapons sales from this country to Peking? I assume that would really worry you.
Sure, because as you know, we've been trying to get some advanced weaponry from your country in the hope that we can maintain our qualitative superior in terms of our national defense as a deterrence to possible invasion. But now, instead of selling us some advanced jet fighters, this administration is considering selling some advanced weapon to Communist China, which in some way it will end up to doing something against either us or some other Asian countries, and which in turn may cause the break of the so-called balance of power in that area, and eventually the breakup of equilibrium.
Just by way of explanation, perhaps we should mention that the Reagan administration has so far refused to sell to your government some of our most advanced jet fighters, for example. Why not, with your healthy, robust economy, go somewhere else in the world market to buy those pieces of military equipment?
Very good. Believe me, we've tried very hard to diversify our sources of military supply, but it is very hard to work alone, and particularly without formal diplomatic relations with many of the countries in the world. It is extremely hard for us to be successful in that aspect. On the other side, our total national defense system is so tied into the American system, because in the past 3 or 4 decades we've been the recipients of, or we've been purchasing weaponry from your country. So it is very expensive and costly for us to shift to a different system as a whole. So we are now doing every way possible, either to establish our own defense industry, but it takes time. And it takes more than 5 or 10 years to achieve to a degree where we can say we are in some way self-sufficient.
But your status in the world in terms of your relationships with other countries makes it difficult for you to go to the French, for example, and buy their sophisticated jet fighters, or to the Israelis and buy their sophisticated jet fighters.
Just imagine the ground maintenance system, the pilot training procedure, and the type of aircraft, the spare parts replacement, things like that. It's a huge, huge money we're talking about.
Right. Do you I'm sure you understand, but do you appreciate, and does your government, the apparent feeling in this administration, in this country, that the U.S. needs to develop these closer military alliances, if you will, with Peking in order to balance that Soviet threat, increasing Soviet threat in Asia?
The bottom line, as far as I myself is concerned, that we may respect, we may understand the need of the national interest of the United States of America. But what we would like to remind the people and government of this country is that maybe it takes a country with the power that you possess to be able to bargain with some power like the regime in Peking. We ourselves can never do anything like that, and we really like to see that along the line that the relationship between Washington, D.C. and Taipei, which is our capital, and the relationship between Washington, D.C. and Peking is parallel. It is parallel, that one way or the other, we do not have to step on each other's toes. And as far as China as a possible offset against Soviet threat in that area, I guess it takes years
should we look
to prove.
Yeah, should we look at the Peking government as a reliable,
the basic
if not
problem,
ally, at least
yes,
a
I
reliable
understand.
partner?
the basic problem is not whether U.S. is willing or not. The basic problem is that there's lack of evidence that that regime is steady or consistent, at least not up to now. We don't have enough evidence to show, because the real problem that people now would ask is that what's going to happen in mainland China after Deng Xiaoping? Now, would Mr. Zhao Ziyang or Hu Yaobang, the party leader, be able to carry out the policy that Deng Xiaoping set for China nowadays after himself? So what if the ultra-leftists come back to the stage in Peking? And would that mean another shift of policy in terms of their relations with the Soviet Russia? Now, I don't know if anybody have ever thought about this, but I just cannot convince myself at this point that a communist country like Red China would really work hand in hand with a capitalist country like USA to counteract another communist country, which is Soviet Union. I mean, this may take years and years to understand the result, but I at this moment I don't think it's really optimistic.
You heard the gentleman on the videotape earlier say that some businessmen, perhaps many businessmen in this country, think that the communist Chinese are moving away. The two countries are, Taiwan and the mainland, are moving together, closer together in terms of their away from collectivism on the mainland toward more individualism. Is there a possibility that in 20 years, 30 years, that the two systems will not be as far out of whack as they are today, so to speak?
Well, if we are able to maintain our own system up to 20 or 30 years later, and if China, Red China, is able to modernize itself in the coming 20 or 30 years from now, I would say that the gap of the difference between the two existing system will come closer. And that may provide a background or a base for a peaceful and natural reunification. Any attempt to reunify the country now through the means of force would be totally unrealistic, because the difference is not really...
But reunification is still the goal, right, for your government? It is
every Chinese people in the world, regardless where they are, they may be in the States, they may be in the island of Taiwan, they may be in other part of the world, would like to see a unified China. But the important thing here is not whether we should do this to show to the history that we are the heroes who made this happen, because in reality we are talking about two different ways of lives.
I'm sorry, I've got to interrupt. We're out of time, unfortunately. It's very good to talk with you. I appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's our time for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Mark Johnson. Good night.
The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.